Right, well, let me just start the ball rolling by saying hello to everybody. And today we are having a chat from Joe in the garlic farm on the Isle of Wight, which is one of our major tourist attractions, amongst other things. But she's got much more important things on her mind than tourism. Um, and I went there and had a fantastic evening a couple of weeks ago when we were treated to the story of what they've been doing to increase their food productivity and then moving into market farming and organic farming and all sorts of things. So hopefully we're going to get fascinated by that. So Joe, I think we've reached the magic 5 minutes, which is the limit I give people. If you care to take over, introduce yourself and tell us what you're going to talk to us about, and then we'll go from there. Thank
Yes.
you.
So, hello everybody. My name's Josephine Boswell. I am a member of the Garlic Farm family. So I grew up on the Garlic Farm, and I have been away um, since the age of about 16, and moved back 3 years ago to join the family farm as impact lead. So I manage all of our social and environmental impact. That's quite I guess because we're a B corporation, I'll talk about that a little bit more. That's a sort of more hefty task than it might be in other companies. Um, and I think coming back to the farm for me was a much easier decision given the way the farm was moving towards. Um, I've been an eco warrior, for want of a better word for it, my whole life. And the gear to organic was something I've been sort of banging the drum about for a long time. So when the farm started to move in that direction, I knew it was, a more welcome place for me to come back to. Um, so rather than sort of shouting from the sidelines, I'm now deeply involved in that, which is really, really great. Um, my personal journey through, I guess, through life has always been around food. I've worked in um, I've worked in food, whether it be my own businesses running festival and catering operations, or in big sort of multinationals like managing Carluccio's. So I've had a real different ends of the spectrum view into food service. And then more recently with COVID, like so many people, my whole festival operation was sort of put on hold for a couple of years, and I took it as an opportunity to move into something I was more passionate about, which is growing food organically. And I worked as a managing a market garden in Bristol in a very deprived part of the world called Parkcliffe, where they have many food deserts, and the operation was growing organic food with a veg box scheme, and supporting people in the community to work, um, with their hands outside. So we did a lot of green social prescribing and working with vulnerable people, basically to improve their health through gardening. So that is my sort of journey back to, and then I had children and then came back to work on the farm. And in most recently, in the last few months, I have been, um, I guess, realizing a dream, which is to set up a market garden on the farm to grow food for the restaurant. Uh, However, that is a very small part of what the garlic farm is doing. Um, and I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, a lot really, about our journey to organic, how we're managing our land to improve the soil, why we got there, etc. So I guess going back to, I mean, almost to my granddad. My granddad moved down here in the 50s, classic conventional farming, using all of what was available to them to grow food for the world, which is what they believed was their, it very much was their mission, to the detriment, as we all now know, of the soil. And so in recent years, we have been, as a family ownership group, which we became in over COVID, it was a real decision from the sort of top down of what do we want the farm to stand for and be about, which I think is the most important thing really for any business to figure that out. And for us, it was to improve, to look after the land we have been entrusted with, and to leave it in a better way than we found it. And so the journey began towards organic. First of all, we're Pasture for Life certified. We are B Corp certified, which means we do business for the good of people and planet as well as profit. I don't know if anyone has come into a B Corp, the B Corp logo, or knows what B Corp is. Anyone? No. You have an idea, Frank? Yeah. It's a big and it's a rigorous certification, which you don't take on lightly. It took us 5 years to become certified, and we are looking to become recertified in January. And it's a big investment, but we believe that it's worth it. Frank, did you have a question?
No, no, no. I was just, I'm aware of B Corp.
You're aware of people, yeah. So yes, so all of those things, our journey towards a better soil has been partly, well, hugely fueled by our fertilizers, which is our herd of cows. So obviously, in an organic system, you've got to find a way of fertilizing the land that doesn't come from chemicals, and we use our ever-growing herd of cattle, Highland and belted Galloways. We use a system of mob grazing, so basically only letting the cows eat a small section of a field at a time for 24 hours and then moving them on. It's quite hard to explain this in words. It's easy when we're looking at a field, but if you imagine you take a field and you split it up into long strips using electric fences, you allow the cows onto one strip of land for 24 hours. Now, what that does is it means that they are eating that grass. Essentially, they're taking the head off that grass once. So when grass is cut, it does stimulate root growth and growth. But if you keep hacking away at it, you will stress the plant out. So the idea with mob grazing is you are only cutting that grass once, or the cows are biting it, and then and then you move them on to the next strip of land. So therefore allowing the land they've been on and they've been pooing on to recover and regenerate. Now we basically do that system across our entire farm. And more recently, we have been given, because of the way we've been managing the land, or Barnes has been managing the land, we've teamed up with the Wildlife Trust, and we are looking after land for them as well, which is great for us because it means that we can have higher quantities of cattle. Great for them because they know that their land is being managed in a way that they are aligned with. And it basically allows us to sort of increase our acreage without having any more land. So yeah, the transition to organic is past and done, but it's an ongoing process that we're very passionate about. And we have seen the benefit of this system of managing our cattle. So since turning organic and using this mob grazing system, just to be clear, that means that our cattle are outside the whole year round. We're not putting them into any kind of shelter over winter. So they're outwintered cattle. And by grazing them in this way and sowing the fields in which they're grazing with a variety of different crops, they are getting a much more varied diet, and therefore we see the vet bills massively reduce. They're not being pumped full of antibiotics. You've got healthier cows, healthier land. It is a win-win situation, but as you can imagine, it does take quite a lot of management, people management, although with the right kit, the right electric fences, quads with machines on the back to roll out the fences, you are looking at a one-man operation to manage large quantities of cattle and land. So we also have a herd of goats, so both the goats and the cattle are raised to provide meat for our restaurant. So we are aiming for our restaurant to be 100% self-sufficient in beef and goat meat. And in time, like I said, with the using of the Wildlife Trust land, we hope to be able to increase our herd to such point where we can sell the meat also in the shop. We have an on-site shop and restaurant. I should have explained, really. I'm sort of presuming everyone's knows about the garlic farm, but the garlic farm consists of a large shop, restaurant, farm that's free to access, market garden, a large online and wholesale presence, and seed garlic operation. And we have accommodation as well at the farm for families in yurts and cottages. So it's a complex mix of things, all run by, there's 3 members of the family running them with their partners. And yeah, everyone is aligned in the sort of organic, sustainable mission, which is very important to bring all of those pieces together. And, you know, everyone has to be believing in this, because it takes extra effort, as anyone who's farmed organically or grown organically will know. And that applies also for the B Corp certification. You are requiring a lot of your teams to go the extra mile, to be more careful with their energy use, be more careful with their waste, look after their teams better. But what we've found is, with all of these certifications, they end up in the long run saving you money. And I think that is a really important point for any business or organization to look at if you're going to switch to something or take on something. Is, you know, is it financially viable? Is it financially beneficial? And, you know, arguably we are doing these things because we care about them, but we're a business, and if they weren't financially beneficial to us, we wouldn't continue. Because a lot of people look at something like the B Corp certification and think they wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, but actually, in the long run, you've got a higher retention of staff, you're looking after them better, you're reducing your energy costs massively. Yeah, the sustainable road is sustainable in all senses. So is everyone, yeah, everyone's sort of keeping up? Sorry, it's a lot of, we'll stop for some questions at the end, Graham, I suppose. Yeah, okay. So a couple of things about our sort of organic fertiliser options. We've got the cows, which do an enormous amount of our work for us. We've got the different kinds of herbal lays, so the different planting schemes that we're using in the fields. So they in themselves are, you know, giving different root depths, different plants giving off different, working differently with the microbes in the soil to increase the nutrient density of the soil and the plants on top of it. In all of this operation, we have our garlic in 2-hectare plots on a 5-year rotation. So that's 10 hectares of garlic growing fields, 2 hectares grown at any one time. And that allows 5 years for those other fields to recover with solely the input of cows and cover crops to fertilize them. In the market garden, a huge part of the business model is to be a closed loop system. So not buying in any inputs from outside. And part of that is driven by our food waste operations. So in the restaurant, we have a large, busy restaurant in the summer doing up to 600 covers a day. You can imagine that's an awful lot of food waste. And that was one of the first things I was keen to tackle when I first got back here. So we have what's called a Rydan composter. This is a sort of huge, if you can imagine, a huge sort of tumbler or a tombola. Food waste goes in one end with a mix shredded cardboard, sawdust. It gets turned, and out of the other end of the tumbler comes within 10 days, you get a kind of partially broken down food stuff or compost. We could then put that into a maturation bin, and within 3 months that would create really great compost. But actually our system at the farm, because we've teamed up with the worm farm, is that we have 3 industrial sized worm farms where all of the food waste that comes out of or compost, if you like, that comes out of the Rydan goes to the worms digest it, and what comes out of that is a very, very fine, it's called vermicast. It's essentially worm castings. The best thing you could possibly apply to your plants or your soil. And so how we use that is we either make a compost tea, which go a little sort of tea bag full of vermicast, which goes in each watering can on the market garden scale, or we make a big vat of tea with sort of an aerator, or we haven't, but we intend to use that on a field scale by putting it in a huge IBC on the back of a tractor. So about 1 kilo of vermicast tea bag on an IBC at the back of a tractor and then sprayed onto the land. What that is doing is if you have soils that have been massively degenerated, they are lacking microbial life. And you can tell that by just putting a spade in the soil on various bits of our land, certainly that were heavily farmed, conventionally farmed. So what you're doing with these teas is you're providing microbial life. So the vermicast is full of microbes. If you imagine that food waste has passed through the gut of a worm, full of beneficial microbes. You then add that to water with some food like molasses and some fresh compost, and you're basically making a concoction that is going to increase the number of microbes by feeding them, and then you are applying that to the land. It's not witchcraft, it's proven science, and it's an excellent way in an organic system of regenerating, bringing back the soils, along with, it's not one fix wonder. You've got cover crops, you've got the cows, and you've got these they're called biostimulants. And don't get me wrong, they won't work as fast as whacking on a load of fertilizers, but they won't damage the soil. They'll increase the soil. And once we get the soil back to, a better state, then it's easier to manage it going forward. But the turnaround from where we're at, particularly in the market garden, my struggle is that the land was so heavily cultivated that we had all of that rain, and now it's just gone solid, like a block of cement. The way I'm dealing with that for this initial year is I'm doing a no-dig approach the ground. I'm gently levering the soil to aerate it without, a plow would essentially just turn it upside down. That would damage any soil life that was in there. So the process with the broad fork is you're just breaking up the land enough so that the compost you put on top and any of the vermicast or any of the amendments that you put on top will eventually make their way down through the soil, and the worms, ideally, will do the work. The worm farms are an amazing contribution from the worm farm. My friends at the worm farm, they kindly haven't asked us to pay for them because we're sort of modeling them and prototyping them. And so far, I'm massively impressed by worms will save us if nothing else will. So if we can, I really think that this sort of, I'm quite passionate about composting. I think that we need to look at composting in a big way in communities as a form of community bringing together, but also as a way of providing communities with great quality compost to then use on their market gardens or in their gardens. But anyway, that's a bit of a sideline, although compost is essentially at the centre of our operation when it comes to the market garden. I think, the last bit. So I guess where I'm with the market garden currently, what I'm looking at is trying very high value crops like salads, greens and herbs and edible flowers. And I hope that in time, once we've sort of really mastered those and shown we can turn a profit, we'll eventually modularly increase the size of the garden, growing different things, because essentially we do want it to be a model for people to look at and be inspired, and learn how to. A huge part of the income for the garden is through educational visits, workshops, lessons, residential weekends, that kind of thing, as well as selling the veg to the restaurant. But anyone who's ever sold veg knows you need to sell an awful lot of it to turn a profit. So looking at other income streams is very important. So yes, I don't know how long you expect me to talk for. I think maybe if there are any questions, that would be great. Otherwise you might get a bit waffly if it wasn't waffly already.
That was a lot of fun, Joe. Thank you very much. I do have a couple of questions before the rest of the world pitches in, if I may. And I just wondered how long it takes to turn around the soil from its current exhausted condition to what you would call reasonable again. Are we talking years?
Very much so. Yes.
Uh,
Well, yes and no. We're talking years for this. It depends, like anything, if I was there tending to it every hour of the day, doing absolutely everything that it required, it would probably be a lot quicker. But if you're looking at, it is a long game. So across you're probably looking at between a 5 and 10 year period to really see a huge change. But we have seen change in the last 3 years with how we've been managing the soil in terms of increased worm count, infiltration, both really good and easy ways to look at improvement of the soil. But yeah, it's certainly a long game rather than a quick fix.
Which is actually, I think, very inspiring. It's lovely to know that there are people out there who are saying not only is this saving us money, but it's also saving the planet and it's taking a long view. Wonderful.
Well, I
Uh,
think so just on that, one of the things that we discussed as an ownership group was there's a kind of in the indigenous culture of looking at any decision you make and how it impacts 8 generations into the future. We don't quite go that far, but it is about thinking about the future generations rather than rather than this one.
And the other question was, I know sort of you have a long-term aim of getting these principles in use all the way across the country, the more the better. But do your education, your workshops, do they take people from the North Island, or are you just dealing with local people?
I'm I'm sort of so we've got some DEFRA funding which allows me 25 pays for 25 visits, and I'm certainly giving Isle of Wight schools the first dibs on that.
Right.
But I take education. If it's an educational visit, I don't mind where I don't mind where they come from. I'm very passionate about inspiring young people on the island because we have we have an opportunity here with a lot of great land to grow more food, which we don't currently do. But that doesn't mean I'm interested in that happening across the country.
I got a bunch of other questions, so let me move on to other people. So, Sean, would you like to have a go?
Yeah, Joe, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. I've got loads of questions, but I'll maybe other people will ask some as well. I, I loved your mention of goats at the early stage there. Can I ask how you keep them? Because I'm kind of representing a parish council, and um, it we have the Bucks Goat Centre in our area, but they're very much constrained within tight fences, and they're really just for kids to go and pet more than anything else. But how do you stop them escaping?
Not with not without difficulty. We've recently invested in some what are essentially like collars that give them a slight jolt when they move out of the area that you want them to be in, which work very well.
Yeah.
A lot of electric fencing and a lot of people management, really, from
Yeah.
Joe, who looks after our goats for us. And they are the most fragile part of the operation in terms of we are constantly assessing whether it's worth our while having them.
Yeah. I was wondering whether sort of a public entity could have them on bits of scrubland to, what do they eat?
Anything.
Yeah. So I was
Anything,
wondering if that could
including
actually
all
be
the flowers
used.
and all the good stuff. So for example, I wouldn't put them anywhere near the market garden unless I
Yeah.
could,
Yeah.
yeah,
Stick them in a bit of scrubland. And one question, then I'll hand over again. On the wormery side,
yeah.
um, could you imagine that could be used with not so much food? I mean, I'm sure we could generate food waste, but not so much food waste. But um, we've got lots of parkland and forestry and that sort of thing. Can wormeries work with, I don't know, loads and loads of ivy, or they just couldn't survive? I mean, obviously mixing it up, but
Yeah. They do. Um, they would take a mix of that stuff. I think
mm,
there are things that they definitely prefer, but I mean, people are using wormeries to eat dog poo, so
really,
to
mm,
process dog poo. So they are. There's complexities, and you'd have to, you can't
yeah,
suddenly take a load of worms that have been eating
yeah,
food
yeah,
waste and then just feed them ivy. But if you were
yeah,
feeding them ivy from the beginning, then they might get through it.
yeah,
But I think goats are better. You're probably better off with goats for that. But what I
yeah,
think what wormeries, the purpose they could serve is this sort of community engagement piece,
yes,
uh,
yeah,
higher awareness around food waste. There are there's setups in Germany where they have a wormery at the center of a community with a food,
mhm,
people are coming and feeding them their food waste and really like caring for them as a community, and then reaping the rewards of using the vermicast in their gardens or in their community gardens. And I
yeah,
think that's something that we could all be getting
yeah,
use of them from.
yeah. I think we could have a village wormery or something like that. So,
Absolutely, yeah, because they
yeah,
don't take a lot of management.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, I think that's
Look
really.
up my friends at the Worm Farm.
I've got them on the screen at the moment. So,
Great.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, there's quite an amusing bit about the goats with the collars on the last Clarkson's farm, wasn't it? They tried it
Oh yeah.
and very fine. Frank, over to you, please. I'm sorry, Gary, I beg your pardon. Um,
No problem. Hi, Joe. I
Hi.
was just wondering, as a farm, have you been receiving any advice or guidance from DEFRA or anyone at all about how to adapt to climate change going forward?
Um, Not directly, no. Which is kind of crazy. However, having said that, there's something called there's a scheme called Farming in Protected Landscapes, which is funding, and I guess we're not being sort of advised directly by DEFRA, but they fund schemes that are improving climate resilience. So, we've put we've done a kind of project up on our downs to basically a water capture project where we've used a yeoman's plough to plough in along the contour lines. It's not ploughing, but it's sort of subsoiling along the contour lines of the valley, and then planting trees also along that same contour line. And this was funded by the likes of Southern Water because they recognise that that is going to capture the water as it gushes down the hill. And it's a process that hasn't been used in the UK anywhere else in the UK because most farmers won't plough on the angle, if you see what I mean. They'll go up and down the valley. So in terms of being direct, they're not sort of directly that's basically my answer to you, is they're funding projects that prove to be resilient, improving resilience, but they're not sort of directly educating people about how to.
But it's a bit crazy then that food security and impacts on agriculture are one of the main, potential impacts going forward. And therefore, nobody is actually talking to farmers about it and saying, like, in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, this type of agriculture might not actually be viable, or it's likely to, these are the crops that we might need to look to be moving into. And nobody's actually engaging with farmers on this, from what you're saying. I find that really surprising, to be honest. I find that very, very surprising indeed. It's just,
Well, I mean, it's the same as, really organic farmers should be the most heavily subsidized.
yeah. I mean, I agree with that, but I mean, just farming in general.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, they're doing these series of films. We've had presentations like last week on it, the People's Emergency Briefing, and food security is one of the main topics of that. So, I mean, even getting that, just showing that to all farmers might be something that could be useful. I just find it. I do find that's very surprising, to be honest with you. I thought they'd be
Yeah.
much more engaged on it.
Well, yes. I mean, we are doing our best to bring other farmers on board with the processes that we are learning about. And we host a lot of evenings, such as Graham came along to kind of inform people of another way. But we're surrounded by conventional farming, and it's a little depressing, I would say. Fields covered in plastic and huge, great, pesticides going onto them. Feels archaic to me, but that's where we're at. We're in that, I think, squeeze point of change. I think there are younger generations farming who are trying to change things, but the old cohort are still there, and there is this challenge of we're led by the demand of supermarkets, etc. And it's as we all know, the system is problematic.
Mm. Gary, I think it's very noticeable that on the government's prepare site, where they're sort of laying out what they think you should be getting ready for, they don't mention food at all, which is extraordinary. So, but it falls in line with what you're saying.
Yeah.
There's a huge opportunity being wasted here at the moment. But I'm glad you raised the point. Thank you. Sean, back to you, please.
I think I saw someone else's. I think Frank's hand was up.
Well, in theory, the system puts them up in order. So
Oh,
you've
really?
beaten him to it, yes. So please go ahead, Sean.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was just going to mention 6 Inches of Soil as a
Yeah.
film that um, is worth watching. That's all, and I've popped that in there. But you've probably all seen it anyway.
I mean, I think you do some. I think, by my understanding, you do similar things in your communities. But 6 Inches of Soil, we screened at the farm last year or the year before. Any way to raise awareness of these issues?
We had one of the sort of local regen farmers come along and answer questions after that. So the point there was to sort of educate the public why they should be looking for higher quality products, but also get the farmers involved. We're quite a sort of agricultural community here anyway, but it is just changing the mindset a little bit. But it all takes time. But he was John Chapman was saying that I think it was back to profit within 3 years or something like that, which is he was happy with.
Frank, it's your turn.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. That's really interesting. I think picking up on the point you made by others, this type of farming you're doing tends to be fragmented and diverse. As you say, you have to find different avenues, different ways to turn a profit. And it's always easier for the government to link or respond to the lobbying of very large agri groups who are doing the old style farming of lots of inputs and manage your margin. So unfortunately, I think us like this lobbying and trying to push up is probably the only way to try and respond to that. Um, in terms of composting, then again, I think we're really irritated in Stirling. A few years ago, it used to have composting of its green waste, and you could go to the council composting site and get bags of compost, and everyone was happy. And then they gave that up as a cost saving about 6 years ago, and now when we're lobbying them to get some areas made biodiverse, which means instead of cutting the grass 6 or 8 times a year, they cut it once a year, but have to do a cut and collect. They don't want to do that because they have to pay to take the collection, the arisings, to Fife or some other council who still compost, because we've no longer got the capacity to do it in house. So it's that short-sightedness and bizarre approach that's a challenge. The other one and I don't know enough about this. I'm interested if everyone has experienced and got thoughts on it. We've had some pushback from people about the ideas of local composting groups in terms of disease control and contamination. So if it's being run properly and you're ensuring it hits the right temperatures and everything's okay, that's great. But all it takes is one or two people who don't fully understand it and who dump stuff in the wrong bin or move stuff the wrong way, and suddenly you've got all sorts of potential disease
Yeah, you're
or
spreading E.
things
coli all
spreading.
over your land and stuff. Yeah. No, it absolutely needs the right education behind it. But I think that's another, killing of us all by health and safety. You know what I mean? Like it's a highly overly cautious approach because I don't know, one incident might have happened. I think for the benefits that it could serve, done in the right way. For example, I had a young guy from the Netherlands a market gardener, come and see my garden last week. And I said, oh, I'm just struggling because if I import compost, which I have to at the moment because I haven't yet got enough made myself, it costs me if I'm buying it in bulk, it costs me about 50 quid a ton, 50 quid a ton bag for bought in, not very good quality municipal compost. And he was absolutely shocked. Do you know it's £2.50 in the Netherlands a ton?
Lots of
Because they
cows
have
over
so
there.
much of it, because their systems work that you pay to get rid of your waste to them. So their income stream is the collection of the stuff, not the sale of the stuff, if that makes sense. And this whole composting piece, I think, is huge. And here at the farm, we're sending all of our on the Isle of Wight, sorry, we send all of our food waste, all of it, raw or cooked, to the mainland, to a biodigester on the mainland. The energy to even take it there, it doesn't make any sense at all. And you're missing out on a huge opportunity to create incredible compost, which is what we need.
And that's health and safety getting in the way.
Well, to a certain extent, it's not an unreasonable concern, but there are many people. America's very big on kind of community composting or these large but good quality composting operations, and it's not rocket science. Like you say, you have to keep it at a certain temperature, not too high, not too low, because if it's too high, that municipal compost that you buy has been literally cooked to death. So it's lacking in any microbial life. Whereas you want to get your compost I think if it goes over 70 degrees, then you're killing everything, the good and the bad. But that's probably what they're asking you to do. Because they fear the good. It's like people are anti-backing their hands all the time. It's not good for you to kill every bit of bacteria on your hands. We need bacteria. Different topic, but
No, I think it's right. When the other problem we have is in recycling glass, the councils look at the best price for it, and then end up shipping it down to the north of England because they're getting a better price and ignoring the environmental costs of trucks traveling down the M6 and M1. You think, it's that inability to look at the whole picture and say, what's the impact of this and why we're actually trying to achieve from it.
Yeah.
Couple of questions, Joe, which I didn't think you were going to miss out, but you appeared to. Could you give us a feeling of what sort of productivity increase you've seen in the soil that has been or is starting to recover? Because you started off with just the one wormery, didn't you, to feed the garlic land itself, and then you discovered that it was doing such a good job that you thought you'd increase it for the market garden.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess a very obvious sign of it working is I mix. So I mix the vermicast with my potting compost, 20%. There's no point adding more than 20% because it's actually just a waste of the vermicast. 20% is enough because it's an inoculant, which means it will then basically the bacteria will multiply into the rest of the whatever you put it into. So if you add it to potting compost, all the seeds that I've sown in that are just, I mean, it's like they're on crack. It's like really probably
So
not a very good example. I wouldn't imagine seeds on crack look very healthy at all, would they? But they look like they've been pumped full of fertilizers, and that is the best example, really. And then any of the garden that I'm watering with the vermicast, as well as our gardener all over the site uses this vermicast to water all of the borders and the flowers. And she's noticed a huge difference because since turning to organic, she was really struggling to know what she could use to feed the plants. And she's found that the vermicast has been better than anything she was using prior to the organic transition. So there's that. I mean, in terms of the transition to organic and the improvement in the soil, like I say, we had a year of quite painful, a couple of years really, of growing garlic, where it's the weed control that's the hardest thing to manage. And it took Barnes went on a sort of research trip to France to visit some organic farmers down there who've been doing it for many years successfully. And at the end of the day, it's about having the right kit and having the right conditions. I mean, this winter the water was insane, and when there's that much water on the land, you can't get on to weed it. So there are all of these challenges, but the quality of the garlic that we harvested last year was very, very good, and we are hopeful for this year that the water hasn't damaged the bulbs too much because the fields were pretty sodden for a long time.
one of the most memorable lines in the People's Emergency Briefing was the statement that the weather we're seeing at the moment is the least extreme that you're going to see in your lifetime. The least extreme. So basically, it's just going to get worse from here.
Yeah.
So if if the problems you're having with water, I can see why Southern Water wants to help sort of reduce the flow of water, at least to slow it down a little bit, so they don't just chuck it all into the Solent. And clearly, obviously, it makes a major difference to you. Again, going back to Clarkson's farm, they're just sort of farming water for a lot of the time.
Yes, and finding ways to capture those insane downpours. It's so
Yes,
painful because we've gone
we're going to
from
have to, aren't we?
I couldn't get onto the market garden to start it because it was so wet, and now I can't get a spade in the ground because it's so dry. This is the reality, and we need to get on with creating these market gardens all over the country so that people
Before it's too late.
realize these challenges now and figure out a way of dealing with them before we're in more desperate, dire straits. Because I really don't think that there's a lot of debate of can small farms feed the world, etc. I think that the purpose of I think there's a diverse purpose to having smaller farms all over the country. And part of it is, community farms and the well-being of the people to see the food that they're growing, to manage the land themselves, is as much of the product as the food itself.
Yes, well, you were mentioning about the demands of the supermarkets, and because of their packaging requirements, they don't like knobbly vegetables, where everything has to be the right shape and size and color, and that's daft, really. And the community farms and the local market farms would obviously teach people to take what's good for taste and everything else, and who cares what color or shape it is.
Yeah.
But interesting. And the second question I had was, you keep talking about the cows and how they're growing in terms of numbers. What number did you start with and where are you at now?
Well, we were given some Highland cows many years ago from some friends, and they were really just for an attraction piece for people to look at. And then it was really when my brother-in-law decided to take an interest, and he's grown the herd from a handful to what it is now. I think there's about 80
Right.
currently.
So it's multiplied by 10 or more.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
And
Uh,
he's become a cat, absolutely zero experience in farming cows. He's sort of taught himself quite radically, which is impressive.
that's what clips the plants will do to you.
Yeah.
Sean, you have another question, please.
Yeah. Joe, could you explain a little bit about the balance between producing food stuff and selling the raw food stuff and the process and the thinking behind turning it into value-added bottled products, particularly at a local level? Because I kind of, if we do something locally here, move into horticulture on a piece of reclaimed land or something like that, it's still probably going to be more expensive than going to Tesco to go and get your carrots. Possibly more expensive.
100%, I'm afraid.
Yes. But if you turn that into carrot cake or whatever, into a relish or something, add value to it, I can see that you can get a premium for that because it's locally made and what have you. We've got people making kombucha around here, and they do extremely well.
Yeah.
Um,
Whereabouts are you, Sean?
Wendover in Buckinghamshire,
Wendover.
in
Okay, yeah. Sorry.
in the Chilterns.
Yeah.
Um, and I think there is an argument about this balance between producing food for, raw food, if you like, and producing value-added products.
Yeah.
I actually personally think producing the value-added products could have more benefit if it feeds money back into the system, and even if it's just selling small volumes locally. Like we've got quite a lot of orchards around here that produce apple juice. They
Yeah.
certainly make more money from their apple juice than they do from selling apples.
Yeah,
Um, so
absolutely.
so that's sort of, can you explain what the thinking was behind the garlic business turning into relishes and what have you, or what the difficulties are?
Yes. So when I was growing up, my mum started making pickles
Yeah,
on the Arga in the kitchen, and that's how our whole, condiment company
condiment.
uh,
Yeah,
began. Purely for that, yeah, for that reason, my dad was being entrepreneurial in desperate times and looking at every way in which we could make money out of garlic, and adding garlic to all sorts of uh, other vegetables, and then charging quite a high price even back then for a
yeah,
small jar of pickle. Um, what I would say about that is the market is quite saturated,
yeah,
because lots of cottage industries are doing it. However, a locally made kimchi or sauerkraut, or
mm,
who is your market, and what
yeah,
is your USP? I mean, if your market is your local town and your USP is that your vegetables were grown locally, then that
yeah,
is going. You're really not competing with anybody else in that
yeah,
in that
yeah,
scenario, and you're also not really going to be making the quantities of things to worry about. You are going to sell what you make. um, Being absolutely in the very much the early and quite painful stages of setting up a market garden, which is for, it has to wash its face. I can't just, the garlic farm isn't doing well enough just to be able to support a project that's just going to, hemorrhage money. It's really challenging, I would say, to make these things work. Hence what I said about, looking at all the other avenues and ways, all the funding for educational trips, all of the workshops, all of the corporate visits, team building away days. If you're going to finding a way to make land work that isn't just it just isn't. Like, look at our garlic farm, it is diversified to the maximum. And I would say, just be very, very realistic. And also, what is your holistic purpose of whatever you're doing with your land? Because a huge part of it might be for the well-being of the community, in which case, depending on what your financials look like, I don't know, but your outcomes are different. If your holistic purpose is for the well-being of the community, then it's very different to if you're trying to raise money for the community. Then you'll have to look at it in a really commercial way. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas my holistic purpose for the market garden is, a huge part of the purpose is to inspire, educate, and entertain our guests that visit, the hundreds of thousands of guests that come past. So although you can't put a price on that, I have to remember that when I'm struggling to grow enough lettuces to sell to the restaurant.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if we can encourage people to visit Wendover, who then spend their money in the coffee shops and things like that, that's
and do not. I mean, the power. I run monthly. We call them getting involved days, because we're not a charity, so we're careful with the word volunteering. But I run monthly getting involved days, and the last one I ran had 25 people turn up, children, grandparents, parents, and it amazes me. Always has done, but I guess it doesn't, because it's what I love doing. The power of gardening, or people's desire to get involved with the land, even when it's not their land. It's extraordinary, and it's very reassuring, because we're going to have to get involved with the land if we can get our flipping hands on the land from the big landowners. But
other question is, how do you go about engaging other entities? So here we've got obviously the parish council, the county council, we've got other parish councils, then there are charities. There's one called Lindengate here, which is about horticulture and well-being. And then there are others training young people in more urban areas like Aylesbury how to cook well using fresh produce and things like that. And it's getting all of the different cogs together to work like that. And I think that's one of the important aspects of how you get everywhere. Because you said, what's your holistic goal? Each one of those would have slightly different holistic goals, but if they can be all aligned or helped, then and then I could have my worm casts, the vermicast, producing stuff for Lindengate, and then going off and like that.
Yes, and I mean, I see a kind of some kind of like overlapping circles Venn diagram going on here, with your market garden or your garden in the middle, and then your different organizations and the overlap of what they will benefit from in the garden. And therefore, maybe, I don't know where the finances come from for if you're from a parish or a county council or whatever, but each of those organizations might want to have an investment in it, because if they can see the benefit. And so starting that conversation, that kind of focus group, I suppose, with all of those people, of whether they're interested. I mean, we're currently working on some quite large bids, which are island wide, which is equally challenging. It's bringing all the voices of the Isle of Wight together through the council, who are a council, on trying to trying to sort of galvanize an idea, it's incredibly challenging. You do
Yeah.
need, and it's in our scenario, it's being sort of driven by one person, which in a way is what needs to happen, because
You need
many
a
voices are
champion.
even harder to
Yeah.
manage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything that they're dying to ask, please? Well, Joe, congratulations. You've managed to fascinate us for an hour, for which I'm very grateful because I'm sure that the repercussions will go on for a lot longer. Thank you very much for entertaining us, for being so inspiring, and I hope everyone's enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And if I had a memory, I would tell everybody what's going. Oh yes, we're going to talk next week about how on earth you turn your community into a plastic-free community.
Ooh.
So, and you
Sounds
might
good.
like that, Joe, because it's local. It's what we've managed to do here in Bembridge, um, but it's applicable across the country, of course. So thank you all very much for your time this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing anybody again next week. And so it
Thank you
goes,
very
so
much.
it goes. Take
Thanks a
care.
lot. That was really great.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye bye, all.
Bye.